Today we will discuss construction of conflicting provisions. Before anything else, just a disclaimer, the individual behind this YouTube channel is a law student. This is not an attempt to present himself as an expert in the field, but merely an effort to share his knowledge of statutory construction based on what he learns and understands in his study of law. This lecture is merely a supplement to your study of this subject. It does not seek to replace your reading materials or contradict what your professors have discussed with you. Statutes in pari materia. It is not uncommon that statutes relate to the same subject matter, to the same class of persons or things, or have the same purpose or object. These are statutes in pari materia. In pari materia is a Latin phrase which means on the same subject matter. So in relation to laws, these are the laws which relate to the same subject matter. So when we encounter statutes in pari materia, how should we treat them? How should the courts construe them? As a general rule, they should be read and construed together to form complete, coherent, and intelligible system. Similar to what we have discussed in chapter 4. We said that laws should be construed as a whole. Why? Because if we skip provisions or exclude provisions from a particular law, the meaning would be entirely different. On a wider perspective, laws should be construed together with one another. Why? Because if we miss a particular law dealing on the same subject matter, the meaning of each law would be entirely different. So, according to the Supreme Court, why should laws be construed together? Whenever the legislature enacts a law, it has in mind the previous statutes relating to the same subject matter, and in the absence of any express repeal or amendment, the statute is deemed enacted in accordance with the legislative policy in those prior statutes. So, it is also well established that everyone is conclusively presumed to know the law. Much more for lawmakers kasi sila talaga ang gumagawa ng batas. In other words, the reason why we construe the laws together is because Congress could not be mistaken for enacting conflicting laws. Why? Because it is always presumed that they have in their minds the previous laws. So in every general rule, there is an exception or exemptions. As a matter of exception, when there is an irreconcilable repugnancy between them, or when the law is evidently intended to supersede all prior acts on the same matter in hand and to compromise itself the sole and complete system of legislation on that subject. Because if it was really the evident intention of the legislature, it should prevail, correct? Because that is the whole point of statutory construction. That is to ascertain and give effect to the intent of the legislature. Therefore, there is no need to construe when the intention of the legislature is evidently apparent. So in that case, the new law, which is repugnantly irreconcilable with the previous one, it shall prevail. So it is deemed that the new law repealed the prior law. So let's have an illustrative case. The case of City of Naga versus Agna. So we will no longer discuss the facts, but we will discuss the laws in question. The issue really in this case is, when did Ordinance number 360 become effective? If we follow Section 2309 of the Revised Administrative Code, the answer would be the year after its passage. Now, if we follow Section 2 of RA 2264, the answer would be 15 days after its passage. So notice the highlighted phrases. We can really see that they are different. The first one says after the next succeeding year. The second one says after 15 days. So when should Ordinance number 360 take effect? You might be wondering, why is there a need for us to determine the effectivity of Ordinance number 360? It's actually a matter of tax liability of the private respondent in this case. So the taxes they paid for the third quarter of 1970 depended entirely on the date of the ordinance when it became effective. So that's why it became an issue in this case. So what was the ruling of the Supreme Court? So you read this portion of the decision, but in other words, ang sinasabi talaga ng Korte Suprema dito, wala naman talagang conflict between the two laws. Why? Because when the problem talks about the effectivity of an ordinance changing or repealing a municipal tax already in existence, then Section 2309 of the Revised Administrative Code will apply. But when we talk about an ordinance creating an entirely new tax, then Section 2 of RA 2264 shall apply. So, I hope you read this portion of the decision because this case is very instructive vis-a-vis statutes that are in pari materia. The point really of this doctrine is, as much as possible, the courts will try to reconcile statutes that are in pari materia. Just because they are dealing with the same subject matter doesn't necessarily follow that they are in conflict with one another. So when the courts see statutes in pari materia, they will try as much as possible to reconcile them. Why? Because again, the legislature was aware of all existing laws when it enacted a later statute. So when the courts encounter statutes in pari materia, what should be their approach? You read the second paragraph of this slide. So they will compare the statutes, then after that, if it cannot be reconciled, the new provision shall prevail than the old one. Why? Because it is the newer expression of the legislature's will. So the courts will now presume that the new law repealed or amended the old law. Later on, we will discuss more of this. But again, do not forget, it happens only when both laws cannot be reconciled. I hope you will not get confused. So let's have another illustrative case. In the case of Gordon versus Veridiano, the San Sebastian drugstore owned by Yambao sold 200 tablets of Valium without a doctor's prescription. Because of this, the FDA directed the closure of the drugstore for 3 days. At the same time, the mayor summarily revoked the permit issued to the said drugstore. On the fourth day, the FDA lifted its closure order. Now, Yambao sought reconsideration of mayor's order of revocation, but the request went unheeded. Yambao then filed a complaint for mandamus and damages with a prayer for a writ of preliminary injunction against the mayor and the vice mayor. While the case is pending, on request of Yambao, the FDA approved the transfer of the location of the drugstore for business reasons, but the same was denied by the mayor. Here, we can already see the conflicting decisions of the mayor and the FDA. When the FDA ordered the closure of the drugstore for 3 days, the mayor summarily revoked its permit. Wala tayong problema dyan. Take note, the FDA's order of closure is only for 3 days. That's why on the fourth day, the FDA lifted its order. Now here's the problem. The mayor did not reconsider the revocation of the permit. This problem got worse when the FDA approved the transfer of location of drugstore, and then the mayor denied it. So whose decision should prevail? Is it the mayor's decision or the FDA's decision? That's why we have this case right now. Now, what are the laws in question here? Under RA 4645, The city mayor and the city health officer shall have the following powers. Under Section 10, to grant or refuse municipal licenses to operate or permits of all classes and to revoke the same for violation of the conditions upon which they were granted, or if acts prohibited by law or city ordinances are being committed under protection of such licenses or in the premises in which the business for which the same have been granted is carried on, or for any other good reason of general interest. Now, under Section 6, he and his representatives shall have the power to arrest violators of health laws, ordinances, rules, and regulations, and to recommend the revocation or suspension of the permits of the different establishments to the city mayor for violation of health laws, ordinances, rules, and regulations. That's why the mayor is saying that his decision should prevail. Now, what about the FDA? Let's proceed to the next slide. We have RA 3720. Under Section 5, Paragraph E, it empowers the FDA to issue certificates of compliance with technical requirements to serve as basis for the issuance of license and spot check for compliance with regulations regarding operation of food, drug, and cosmetic manufacturers and establishment. Also, under Section 1 of PD 280, any provision of law to the contrary notwithstanding, the Food and Drug Administrator is hereby authorized to order the closure or suspend or revoke the license of any drug establishment. Now, before we proceed with the issue, you can observe that the laws in question are obviously in pari materia. Why? Because they deal with the same subject matter, that is, the revocation of license. We mentioned earlier how should the court address the issues on statutes that are in pari materia. Now, let's look at the issue. Whether or not the city mayor can revoke the business license of an enterprise for violating a law, notwithstanding the fact that such enterprise has subsequently been allowed by a national agency to continue its operations. In this case, the court made an extensive discussion as to how they reconcile the laws that are in pari materia. I hope you read the full text of the decision because you cannot fully understand this case if you rely on digests. Ganito kasi yan. I will just simplify the decision of the Supreme Court. But again, I encourage you to read the full text of the case. Simulan natin by mentioning that the authorization of the FDA is one thing, the mayor's permit is also another thing. The purpose of the authorization from the FDA is to ensure that the San Sebastian drugstore is compliant with the national laws and regulations of drug sales. On the other hand, the issuance of the mayor's permit concerns the particular conditions set forth by the local authorities. In short, the authorization from the FDA deals with national laws while the mayor's permit deals with local laws. There was a thin line separating the two. Now, how do we resolve the case before us? In this case kasi, you have to remember that the mayor revoked the permit on what grounds? On the ground that the San Sebastian drugstore sold tablets of Valium without the doctor's prescription. This is the very reason why the FDA ordered the closure. That's why if you read the ruling, the Supreme Court categorically said the mayor was in effect reversing the decision of the latter on a matter that came under its jurisdiction, which is the FDA. Kasi pumayag ng FDA eh. Lifted na yung order of closure. Now here comes mayor, refusing to reconsider the issuance of mayor's permit. Parang ayaw magpatawad ni Mayor sa kasalanan ni San Sebastian Drugstore. Now, is this allowed? No, because it turns out that the mayor is usurping to the decision of the FDA. Sabi ng FDA, tapos na nga eh. Si mayor ayaw pa rin. I hope I am making sense now. Going back to the principle that we've been discussing. In this case, there were several provisions of law that are in pari materia. What did the court do? It did not nullify even a single provision of law. Why? Because the courts are duty bound to reconcile conflicting statutes. That's how we appreciate the court's action when it comes to statutes that are in pari materia. When there are laws in pari materia and it involves a special law and a general law, it is the special law that will prevail. But first, let's define these two. When we say special law, it is a law that applies to a particular place or especially to a particular member or members of a class of persons or things in the same situation but not to the entire class. On the other hand, when we say general law, it is a law that is unrestricted as to time, is applicable throughout the entire country, subject to the power of the legislature that enacted it, and applies to all persons in the same class. When we say special law, it is a law which relates to a particular persons or things of a class. When we say general law, it embraces a class of subjects or places and does not omit any subject or place naturally belonging to such class. A general law and a special law on the same subject are statutes in pari materia and should accordingly be read together and harmonized if possible, with a view to giving effect to both. The rule is that where there are two acts, one of which is special and particular, and the other general, which, if standing alone, would include the same matter and thus conflict with the special act, the special must prevail, since it evinces the legislative intent more clearly than that of a general statute, and must be taken as intended to constitute an exception to the general act. But again, do not forget how the courts deal with statutes in pari materia. As much as possible, they should be harmonized. We have no problems with that. In the previous cases, we can readily observe how the court endeavored to harmonize statutes in pari materia. But here's an interesting question. What if there is a special law and there is a general law? Now, the general law, if it can stand alone, will contradict the special law. What will prevail? Is it the special law or the general law? The answer is the special law. Why? Because with regard to the special law, it is very specific. The intent of the lawmakers in setting the specific parameters and defining the specific terms was intentional. If it was not intended by the lawmakers, then there would be no reason for us to have that special law. Pero there is a special law eh. It is in the special law that we find the apparent intention of the legislature. That is why it should prevail. To better understand this, let's have some illustrative cases. In the case of Magtahas versus Price Property Corp. Incorporated, the facts are as follows. Presidential Decree or PD number 1869 authorized the PAGCOR to centralize and regulate all games of chance, including casinos, on land and sea within Philippine territorial jurisdiction. On the other hand, the Local Government Code of 1991, a later law, empowers local government units to enact ordinances to prevent and suppress gambling and other prohibited games of chance. Here, as you can see, there are two laws dealing with the same subject matter. That is the game of chance. PD 1869 confers the power to PAGCOR to regulate all games of chance in the Philippines. On the other hand, the local government code authorizes local government units to prevent and suppress games of chance. In effect, the local government units are empowered to prevent and suppress what PD 1869 regulates. So ano ba talaga? Can games of chance be allowed or not? For the issue, which law should prevail? The answer is they should be harmonized. On the assumption of a conflict between PD 1869 and the code, the proper action is not to uphold one and annul the other, but to give effect to both by harmonizing them if possible. This is possible in the case before us. The proper resolution of the problem at hand is to hold that under the local government code, local government units may prevent and suppress all kinds of gambling within their territories, except only those allowed by statutes like PD 1869. The exception reserved in such laws must be read into the code to make both the code and such laws equally effective and mutually complementary. So the answer is both of them prevails. Why? As I said in the previous slide, the rule insofar as special law prevails over general law applies only when the general law standing alone is in conflict with the special law. In this case, the general law is PD 1869, while the special law is the local government code. These two laws are not in conflict with each other. In fact, they complement each other. Why? Because without PD 1869, the local government units can validly prevent and suppress all games of chance without any exception. If that's the case, baka wala ng game of chance. But because of PD 1869, the local government units can only prohibit those game of chance that are not authorized by PD 1869. So, in this case, the rule that special law prevails over general law cannot be applied because these laws are not in conflict with each other. Let's go to another case, the case of Lopez versus Civil Service Commission. In this case, the issue is whether the City Council of Manila has the power to appoint council of officers and employees under RA 409 or whether said power has been vested in the city mayor pursuant to RA 5185 and BP 337. In this case, we have three laws in question. RA 409 on the one hand and RA 5185 and BP 337 on the other hand. Ano ba ang nakasaad sa mga batas na ito? First, we have Section 15 of RA 409. Under RA 409, the board, or hereinafter referred to as the City Council, shall appoint the Council of Officers. The term board, as used in Section 15, refers to the governance body for which the Vice Mayor is presiding. For example, the City of Manila. Now, Section 4 of RA 5815 as well as Section 171 of BP 337 states that it is the city mayor who shall appoint. So which one should prevail? So you can read these laws for you to better compare them. So according to the Supreme Court, there is no doubt that Republic Act number 409, which provides specifically for the organization of the government of the City of Manila, is a special law. And whereas Republic Act number 5185 and Batas Bilang 337, which apply to municipal governments in general, are general laws. As the Solicitor General points out, and we agree with him, It is a canon of statutory construction that a special law prevails over a general law, regardless of their dates of passage. And the special law is to be considered as remaining an exception to the general law. In other words, what the Supreme Court is trying to say here is that RA 409 is a special law because it provides for the organization of the government of the City of Manila. Specific siya eh. Ginawa siya para sa Manila. On the other hand, RA 5185 and BP 337 are general laws. Now, going back to the question, which one should prevail? Of course, it is the special law, which in this case is Republic Act number 409. Now compare this with the case that we previously discussed. In the previous case kasi, wala namang conflict between the two laws. In that case, those laws actually complement each other. In this case, there is an apparent conflict. That's why the special law has to prevail over the general law. So that's how we appreciate the doctrine. Those are the most important things that we have to remember. However, there is this interesting case wherein the Supreme Court made an exception to the rule that special law prevails over general law. I invite your attention to the case of City of Manila versus Teotico. In this case, the facts are very simple. Teotico fell inside an uncovered and unlighted manhole, resulting in injuries. Teotico filed an action for damages against the City of Manila. What law should govern the case? The law in question here are the following. First, Section 4 of RA 409, and second, Article 2189 of the Civil Code. The conflicting provisions are pretty much apparent. Under RA 409, the city shall not be liable. But under the Civil Code, the city shall be liable. So, which one should we follow? Now, let's look at it this way. First, are they dealing with the same subject matter? Yes. Therefore, they are in pare materia. Second, are the provisions in conflict with each other? Yes. Therefore, one should give way in favor of the other. Now, third, which one is the special law? Kasi di ba, ganun yung factors na tinitingnan ng Supreme Court. Are they in pari materia? Check. Are the provisions conflicting? Check. But which one is the special law? So that's the question. If we look into the law itself, we discussed in the previous case that RA 409 was made specifically for the City of Manila, correct? Now, you might be thinking, of course, the special law is RA 409. But as I said, this case is an exception. How did the Supreme Court decide? We will find out. So you can just read this portion of the decision, but let me simplify it. What the Supreme Court is trying to say here is that Section 4 of RA 409 is a general provision of liability of officers of the City of Manila for negligence. Take note, for negligence. Again, what was the cause why Teotico fell into the manhole? Because it was uncovered. In other words, it was because of a defective condition. On the other hand, Article 2189 is a specific provision that expressly mentions defective condition. So in this case, the court applied the principle that specific law prevails over general law. However, in this case, it was the provision of the Civil Code which was considered specific. At the end of the day, just because a law was specifically made for a city, that does not automatically mean that it should at all times prevail over general law. In this case kasi, yes, it is true that RA 409 was specifically made for the city of Manila. But the question lies on whether or not the provision in question is a general provision or a specific provision. Here, Section 4 of RA 409 is a general provision. So pwede nating sabihin ganito. The law may be specific, but the provision is general. Now let's go to another topic. Substantive law versus procedural law. When we say substantive law, it creates, defines, or regulates rights concerning life, liberty, or property, or the powers of agencies or instrumentalities for the administration of public affairs. When we say procedural law, these are provisions prescribing the method by which substantive rights may be enforced in courts of justice. Now, how do we determine whether a provision of law is substantive or procedural? Minsan kasi, hindi porket nakasaad sa civil code, substantive agad. Hindi rin porket nakasaad sa rules of court, procedural agad. There are provisions under the civil code that are actually procedural. So, the law under which that provision is stated is not conclusive. Are there any tests? Yes. So, what is the test? The test is whether the rule really regulates procedure, that is, judicial process for enforcing rights and duties recognized by substantive law and for justly administering remedy and redress for a disregard or infraction of them. If the rule takes away a vested right, it is not procedural. If the rule creates a right such as the right to appeal, it may be classified as a substantive matter. But if it operates as a means of implementing an existing right, then the rule deals merely with procedure. So I hope you also read the case of Fabian versus Desierto. So do not forget Section 5, Paragraph 5, Article 8 of the 1987 Constitution. It states there that the Supreme Court shall have the power to promulgate rules concerning the protection and enforcement of constitutional rights, pleading, practice, and procedure in all courts, the admission to the practice of law, the integrated bar, and legal assistance to underprivileged. Such rules shall provide a simplified and inexpensive procedure for the speedy disposition of cases, shall be uniform for all courts of the same grade, and shall not diminish, increase, or modify substantive rights. Rules of procedure of special courts and quasi-judicial bodies shall remain effective unless disapproved by the Supreme Court. Never forget this constitutional provision because this is all-encompassing. Master this provision and you will never get confused with this particular topic. At this point, you should already understand why the rules of court was not written by Congress. It was actually written by the Supreme Court and promulgated by the Supreme Court. Why? Simply because under the Constitution, it is the Supreme Court, not the Congress, who has the power to promulgate the rules. So if the Congress enacts the rules of court, that would not be valid. Also, under this provision, you can readily tell that the rules of procedure promulgated by the Supreme Court cannot diminish, increase, or modify substantive rights. So if a rule, let's say the rules of court, amends your substantive rights under the Civil Code or the Constitution, that rule will be invalid. So let's have an illustrative case. The case of Astepona versus Lobrigo. In this case, Congress enacted RA 9165, or the Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, which prohibits plea bargaining in drugs cases. So according to the Supreme Court, this is not allowed. The prevailing consideration was that both bodies, the Supreme Court and the legislature, have their inherent powers. Thus, it now stands Congress has no authority to repeal, alter, or supplement rules concerning pleading, practice, and procedure. Basically, the Supreme Court here said plea bargaining is a rule of procedure. That that is why the Congress is not allowed to prohibit plea bargaining. Why? For the simple reason that it is only the Supreme Court who can do that. Now, since we are dealing with statutes in pari materia, it means it involves two or more statutes dealing on the same subject matter. If there are two or more statutes, then, of course, one of them was enacted earlier than the other. Now, how should the courts deal with these statutes? The first step is to harmonize the two laws and see if each can be given effect in their entirety. So it's the same. The courts, as much as possible, will try to reconcile these laws. Now, what if the law cannot be reconciled? If the laws cannot be reconciled, then the various special rules of interpreting statutes in pari materia should be considered, such as general law versus special law and substantive law versus procedural law. Those are the things that we discussed earlier. So, we apply these principles. Ano ulit yun? Una, special law prevails over general law. Pangalawa, procedural law cannot amend substantive law. We have to keep these rules in our mind because those rules are not enunciated in one document. You cannot find that in a caudal. They are scattered in various jurisprudence and various laws. Now, what if, after applying those rules, it turned out it was not applicable? If these special rules do not apply, then one may consider the later law as amending or impliedly repealing the earlier law. So that's the time that the courts will say that the later law amends the earlier law impliedly. Impliedly because the later law did not expressly provide that it intends to amend the earlier law. Can this be done? Yes, because after all, we discussed in previous chapters that Congress cannot pass irrepealable laws. So, if it can be ascertained from the legislative intent that the later law intends to amend or revise or repeal the earlier law, then that should be followed. Yes, it still depends on the legislative intent. Let's have an illustrative case. The case of PNB versus Cruz. In this case, Amex laid off about 70% of its employees due to business reverses. The remaining employees constituting 30% of the original workforce, however, were not paid their wages. The labor arbiter decided in favor of the employees. PNB, a mortgage creditor of Amex, appealed the decision. Now the issue, whether the employees have a superior claim over the assets of Amex. In this case kasi, dalawa ang nagsasalpukan over the money of Amex. The first one are its employees. The second one is its creditor. Sino ba ang dapat maunang bayaran? Ang mga empleyado o ang inutangan? Sabi ng labor arbiter, it should be the employees. Sabi ng PNB, teka muna, Under the Civil Code, we are preferred. In other words, kami dapat ang unang bayaran. Sabi naman ng employee, sabate ka muna din. Under the Labor Code, we are preferred. So who is correct? That's the issue. So the Supreme Court said, yes. Whenever two statutes of different dates and of contrary tenor are of equal theoretical application to a particular case, the statute of later date must prevail, being a later expression of legislative will. Applying the aforecited case in the instant petition, the Civil Code provision cited by the petitioner must yield to Article 110 of the Labor Code. So in other words, since the Labor Code of the Philippines is a later law than the Civil Code, it is the Labor Code that shall prevail. Therefore, the employees have a superior claim than PNB. Here's the case of Mecano versus COA. In this case, the petitioner was a director too of the NBI when he was hospitalized for cholecystitis, making him incur medical and hospitalization expenses, the total amount of which claimed from the COA. The COA denied the claim on the ground that Section 699 of the Revised Administrative Code, the law relied upon by the petitioner, has been repealed by the Administrative Code of 1987 solely for the reason that said provision was not reenacted in the Administrative Code of 1987. So the facts are very clear. Keep in mind that the law relied upon by the petitioner was the old Administrative Code. On the other hand, the law relied upon by the COA was the new Administrative Code. So who is correct? Before we proceed with the ruling, it is imperative that we also read the pertinent provision of the new Administrative Code. So this is the provision of the new Administrative Code. Under Section 27, repealing clause, all laws, decrees, orders, rules, and regulations, or portions thereof inconsistent, take note of the keyword inconsistent, with this code are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. So what is the keyword? Inconsistent. Under the new administrative code kasi, hindi nakasaad yung batas na pinagbabasehan ni petitioner ng claim niya. So, sabi ng COA, that provision relied upon by the petitioner is deemed repealed. Wala sa bagong batas eh. But what was the statement of the Supreme Court? According to the Supreme Court, comparing the two codes, it is apparent that the new code does not cover nor attempt to cover the entire subject matter of the old code. There are several matters treated in the old code which are not found in the new code, such as the provisions on notaries public, the leave law, the public bonding law, military reservations, claims for sickness benefit under Section 699, and still others. So, just because the old provision relied upon by the petitioner cannot be found under the new administrative code, that does not automatically mean that the old provision was repealed. Remember, what was the keyword again? Inconsistent. Only those which are inconsistent with the code are deemed repealed. Was the old administrative code inconsistent with the new one? Certainly not. Kasi nga, wala naman sa new code. Paano magiging inconsistent yun? So that's how you appreciate the doctrine in this case. According also to a well-established doctrine in statutory construction, when you say implied repeal by reconcilable inconsistency, the inconsistency must be clear, manifest, and irreconcilable. That is not present in this case. So I encourage you to read the full text of this case because this case has plenty of doctrines with regard to the topic repeal. So let's go to the last topic, earlier law versus later law, amendment and repeal. There are two kinds of implied repeals. First, we have repeals by irreconcilable inconsistency. It means there must be more than a mere difference in their terms and provisions that they cannot be reconciled and made stand together. When we say repeals by substitution, two statutes are inconsistent and irreconcilable, or the new statute is clearly intended as a substitute for the old one. That's also the difficult part when it is implied repeal. Mas madali kapag express repeal na lang. Why? Because in the latter case, when the language of the statute is clear, and that is really the language of the law, we can have no doubt in our mind that the later statute really intends to repeal the old one. Now, on the other hand, when it is an implied repeal, we have many things to look for. That is also why there were previous decisions of the Supreme Court that says implied repeals are frowned upon. They are not favored. We talked about repeal. What about amendment? One of the well-established rules of statutory construction enjoins that endeavor should be made to harmonize the provisions of a law or two laws so that each shall be effective. In order that one law may operate to repeal another law, the two laws must actually be inconsistent. The former must be so repugnant as to be irreconcilable with the latter act. Merely because a later enactment may relate to the same subject matter as that of an earlier statute is not of itself sufficient to cause an implied repeal of the latter, since the new law may be cumulative or a continuation of the old one. So, it's actually quite the same. First, the courts should harmonize the provisions if possible. If it is impossible to harmonize them, then that's the time that the court can actually say that the later law amended the earlier law. Thank you for listening. May your love for the law remain strong as always. Maraming salamat po.